Welcome to BingeBooks Book Club. I am Alessandra Torre, and I am joined today by our author, Kyla Stone, who is going to be talking to us all about her latest release, The Light We Lost. Welcome, Kyla. It's great to have you here.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to talk about this book. Before we jump into book-specific questions, can you just tell the viewers and those who watch the replay a little bit about you, what you write, how long you've been writing, that sort of thing?
Okay. I'm a post-apocalyptic fiction author, so pretty much all my books explore end of the world scenarios. I really like exploring different characters and how people would react to survival situations, things like that. The Light We Lost is my 22nd book. I've been doing indie publishing this is my 5th year, but I've loved writing since I was a little girl. I wrote my first story when I was 5. I wrote my first 300 manuscript my senior year of high school as my honors thesis project. So it's always been something I love, but I'm really excited that I get to do it full time now as my living. And I live in Southwest Michigan with my family and 2 very spoiled cats.
I love that. And that was one of the first questions we got from readers. And any readers watching, don't be shy. Please pop your questions in. We're going to try to answer as many of them as possible in the next half hour. But one of the first questions we got was about the setting. And this was actually submitted by a reader who's very familiar with this area. And so the question is, how and why did you choose Michigan's Upper Peninsula and specifically the beautiful area around Pictured Rocks? Munising? I don't think I was pronouncing that right. Yeah, Autrain and the Grand Island.
So I grew up in Michigan, and then as an adult, went and lived in Tampa for 7 years, then Atlanta for 5, and then last year moved back to Michigan. And I think as an adult, I have such a greater appreciation for the beauty of the state that we live in. I mean, we can be like, winter, right? But it's really, really beautiful, especially northern Michigan. It's just rugged and spectacular, and Lake Superior is just so awe-inspiring. And every time I have gone to that area, I just really loved it. And there's not that many books that are based in the Upper Peninsula. So I really wanted to showcase a state in an area that I love. And Munising and the Pictured Rocks area is just so beautiful. It was something I wanted to explore more in my fiction.
I love that. And I've never been to that area, but now reading about it, and I love the cover. The cover of this book was so striking. I know it grabbed me as a reader right away. But talking about and reading about the Northern Lights, I was like, oh man, like now it's on my bucket list.
Yes. And you can see the Northern Lights in the Upper Peninsula as well. The regular Northern Lights, not the world-ending Northern Lights.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to see those.
The safe ones.
Those type. David on Facebook said, where do you get your ideas for your books? I love all your books.
Thank you very much, David. I always have ideas in my head. Like always, I have characters talking to me. I have scenarios that pop into my head at 3:00 in the morning, so I can't sleep. I'm jotting ideas down in my phone or in a notebook in my purse. Just always constantly stories my whole life. And I glean, I love to read. I love to watch movies, TV shows, talk to people about their experiences. Stories in any form like fascinate me and inspire me. Music does too. Particular songs that evoke any kind of emotions. All of those things are inspirational to me.
And do you normally read and watch like post-apocalyptic stuff, or you read and watch everything and those ideas can feed and be applied to your stories?
Right, everything. And I even think that stories outside your main genre can be the most inspirational. I like a lot of thrillers. I'm reading the newest Orphan X right now by Greg Horitz. I like Brad Thor. I like Lee Child. We just started watching the new Reacher show last night, which is super good. Highly recommend it. So I like a lot of thrillers, suspense, Dean Koontz, but I do read Post-Apoc too. I love that genre. Cormac McCarthy's The Road is probably my favorite book. I read Station 11 a few years ago, Swan Song, The Passage, all those books I enjoy. But I do read outside my genre, and I'll watch anything that's a good story and has great characters. I'm all in.
You're in. And we're getting some nice comments. Anna says that she loves your books. Melva says you're her favorite apocalyptic writer. She's read all of your books. Scott said, hey. Kyla.
Guys, hi.
And Anna asked, how old were you when you published your first book? Did you have, or have you had another profession? Do you have another profession?
Okay. So I majored in English writing. I did get my English teaching degree. And I did some teaching part-time while writing on the side. Early on, I did like magazine writing, some travel writing, some freelance writing for regional magazines. So my first love is always fiction, but I've always done something writing related. I worked for a communications company doing PR and marketing releases. So again, writing, but not the stories that I really, really loved. And then for 7 years, I worked for an educational publisher like Scholastic, but smaller, and wrote children's books for the public school system. So for a while, I was writing like princess ninja detective stories for like 7-year-olds. At the same time, I was writing the post-apocalyptic, gritty, end of the world stuff. And so like my brain had to kind of switch between the two. But now I'm doing the novels full time. But everything I've done has always been writing related. Writing, some sort of writing, but the fiction and the stories is my first love.
I love that. Scott said, you put your characters through some seriously intense scenes and situations as we've been living in a pandemic that puts us all in some form of a post-apoc event. Does that help you get into these characters' mindsets to write the emotions they may feel at a given moment? As what we've read can be very lifelike, and certainly we can imagine what the characters are going through when he reads your books.
Okay, so the internet kind of timed out for me for a minute. I know
Yes.
that was a long question.
So the gist of the question was like, with us going through the pandemic, did that help you at all get into your character's mindset or understand maybe some of the emotions that they're going through?
Yes, it did. I know it was kind of like the apocalypse light, but I think it really made me think, okay, the depression that people have gone through, the anxiety, the feeling of being cut off from our relationships and from the things that feed us, which is connection with other people, getting to see each other, that closeness. It's really made me mindful to make sure I include the emotional element. I think in post-apocalyptic fiction, we can focus on the survival, like at all costs type of thing. But I think that psychologically and emotionally, with the pandemic, or if anything else comes down the line, that emotional resilience is a big deal, is a huge deal. And I think that mental health is something we all need to think about moving forward. And I make sure to address that, and we'll be addressing that further into this series as well.
I love that answer, because it's so true. Like, it's so easy to be like, oh, they're facing this and this and they have to do, and it's easy to forget while you're putting their physical body through so many things, the toll that it can take and the other emotions that they have. What a great question and answer. Kathy says, so excited to be here. Have read almost all of your books. Do you know how many books will be in a series when you start a book or when you start a series?
No. I try to have an idea for at least 3 to 4 books, and then, kind of see how it goes. Edge of Collapse, which was my last series, was supposed to be 5 books. And when I was writing the 5th book, I was like, this story is not done, right? Like, these characters have further to go in their emotional journeys. The emotional journey and the character arc is the biggest part for me, for when a story is finished. And so I ended up adding 2 more books. because they weren't ready yet. And I didn't realize that until book 5. This series I'm planning for 3 or 4 books, but I don't know. When I get to book 3 or 4, we'll see what the characters tell me and how far along their journey is. So yeah, I think it's important to be open to knowing when the story is finished, or if you feel like the characters have more to say.
Absolutely. Barry said, do you ever feel guilty for keeping us up until the wee hours in the morning, not being able to put down your book?
No, I actually that's super flattering to me as an author. When you're like, I was up till 3 a.m. and I couldn't put it down. I'm like, sorry, not sorry. I'm really that's a huge compliment, Barry. Thank you so much. That the words that I'm putting down on paper when I'm it's such a solo career, right? We're all by ourselves in our office or in our writing cave or whatever, and we're just hoping that we're writing a story that our readers will connect with, or that they will fall in love with the characters. And a lot of times it's I don't know until it's out. So when you guys tell me I was up till 0 dark 30, right, ready to, I'm okay, I've done my job. I'm entertaining you to the point where you're staying up too late and making irresponsible decisions. That's fabulous for me. I'm sorry for you and work the next day.
This next question might be my favorite. It's from Reese. And she said, can we look forward to a protective attack cat in a future book? A Maine Coon would fit the bill.
Oh, yes.
Male or female.
Awesome,
so sorry about that. Yeah.
Cats get shortchanged in post-apocalyptic fiction. We do a lot of dogs. And I kind of had a few cats in the Edge of Collapse series, but they were not protective attack cats. So that's something that I will keep in mind in the future.
I love that. JD said, Kyla, you're such a great writer and storyteller. The Light We Lost has sci-fi, thriller, and mystery elements. What makes it post-apocalyptic besides setting? Can you talk a little bit more about that subgenre? Okay.
So I think one thing that I've intentionally done as a writer is I want to bring more to the post-apocalyptic genre. I think a lot of those stories have already been told in a lot of books, which is, the world is ending, chaos is happening, and we have characters who are either trapped away from home, who need to journey home to safety, or they're trying to protect their home from people who want to take it over or take their food. That's my cat.
Speaking of cat. Yeah. And Wayne said try a lynx. Yeah. The attack cat. Yeah. She's like, I heard you talking about
great. I'll use this one right here. This is so with the Edge of Collapse series, I added a thriller element in the serial killer, and this one has a murder mystery element, and that's very challenging for me. It was definitely new to add red herrings and clues and suspects, but I also found it very interesting as an author, and hopefully the readers found it interesting too. The post-apocalyptic aspects are, when the rules start, not the rules, but society, the things that we
structure of society,
structure our communication, the police, when you can't call 911 when an accident happens, or when the shelves are empty and there's no more food, when the hospitals, don't have power or supplies aren't being delivered, what happens and what do we do? And when you're looking at your kids and your pantry's empty and you have no food, but your neighbor has food.
Yeah.
What are you
ordinary people
what are you willing to do? Yeah. Or that neighbor, you do have food and that neighbor comes for your food. We have morality, but then when things start to break down, what happens? Does survival trump morality? Can we still be ethical human beings even in a state of chaos? That kind of stuff really fascinates me. Who are we when society, the fabric of society, dissolves around us? And those are the kind of things that I find fascinating as a reader, and I like to explore that in my fiction. And that's the post-apocalyptic elements, I think, that are key in pretty much every post-apocalyptic storyline.
Yeah, and we're having a lot of Barry says, great point. If you can't protect it, it's not yours. And Zenda says it makes you think. Neil said you're definitely the top author in post-apoc, I guess is the right way to say it.
Yeah, thank you, Neil.
So has envisioning all these scenarios, has that changed anything you do in your daily life? Like for me, when reading about a lot of this, I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to have food stored and, extra things and a generator or something else. So does envisioning all these possibilities make you more of a prepper? Right.
Yes. And I would say like, even like starting out, like I had, 6 months of food or whatever, but okay, now let's do 9 months. Or we just moved last month into a new to us house. When we've been renting for a long time, and I'm like, okay, it's time for a whole house generator. And then like when I'm writing this stuff, I'm like, no, it's time now. Like we're not waiting 6 months. We need to get one now. But yeah, having bug out bags, having emergency kits in your car, having, 3, 6, 9 months of food. You can start out small, just a few extra cans every time you go shopping, and it adds up over time. Things like that. But yeah, I like to be prepared anyways, but it definitely lights a fire under you when you're exploring these different scenarios. And there's always more you can do.
Yeah. And when you're surrounded by it mentally, I mean, you're surrounded by it a lot. Yeah, Richard said better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. So, and that takes us a little bit into the research, both for this book, but for, I guess writing in this genre to begin with. With this book and with you having rescue dogs and things like that, are you doing a ton of research, or have you just been doing research over the last 5 years and now I know you said this is kind of the first jump into murder mystery or, police procedural. Like I noticed you for me, at least, the police scene seemed very realistic. Like you knew what you were talking about with those.
Yeah, this book probably required the most research. And I think like with any scenario, EMP is different than solar flare, CME is different than nuclear disaster, right? So that always requires research. And then search and rescue, like I had to do a lot of research for that. Lena's diabetic, I had to do research for that. Then, Jackson Cross as a police officer doing an investigation. I interviewed an actual detective and talked with him through like, what's realistic, to try to be, as realistic as I can while also still telling an entertaining story. So this and prison. Eli Hope starts out in prison. So luckily my brother-in-law is a prison guard. So I could be like, hey, it's only a few chapters, but I still want it to be correct, right? So what's it like in prison? What are the procedures, things like that. So.
And what do you do when the power goes out there? That was, I thought that was really interesting. And kind of, I missed a comment earlier, but it was when you were talking about, trying, a lot of the scenarios have been done kind of in post-apoc over and over. But someone, if I can find their comment, they said they really liked kind of how it was a different perspective. So, and this specifically, I had to write down the name of it when I read it. It was coronal mass ejections. Is that the right?
Yeah, coronal mass ejections.
Coronal mass ejections. So is that something you had to study on, is how that would happen and what it would affect in different ways?
Yes. Yeah. What that looks like, what it would affect, whether it's large, the power grid versus an EMP also taking out small electronics. Well, coronal mass ejections are usually power grid or long connector type thing, but eventually everything's going to stop working if you don't have power. And the satellite and GPS systems, like research into just how much GPS is used in everything these days. I didn't realize like how pervasive that is. And if we lost our satellites, it would affect a lot of aspects of society very, very quickly.
Yeah, it was a comment from Melva. She said, I love the way you took a different approach to the way the lights go out in this story. Yeah, and it was interesting how it kind of slowly unfolded. And Richard said, the thing that attracts him to your stories is the fine balance between the lives of your characters and what they go through, and at the same time surviving an apocalypse. Other authors do this to a certain degree, but you have a good balance between the two. So do you develop those separately? Like, this is what's going to be happening in the world and the challenges they face, and then this is, their character's plot line? Or are you pantsing as you go? Like, how are you planning that out?
So my goal is to have characters who are so interesting and compelling that even if you didn't have an apocalypse, you would still want to read about them in their story.
Yeah.
That's kind of like my first goal. And then you add the apocalypse on top of that.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, you've got layers upon layers. But yeah, I'm always giving them, like, hopefully a compelling backstory and inner turmoil and trauma, I guess, that they're working through. And the apocalypse gives them the surviving, right? And accomplishing things and facing and confronting their fears grows them as individuals and helps them overcome the struggles that they're dealing with. So I definitely try to give them all some pretty serious flaws at the beginning. But my hope is that the readers will root for them, right, through this process as they're growing through the story. And that's my goal.
Well, I think you definitely accomplished that. I know for me, just in the first 10-15%, I was like, oh my gosh, so much is going on. And really the apocalypse part hadn't begun yet. I mean, we were just seeing a little bit of annoyance with, but I was already so invested. And Barry says, tell us the truth. Do you have some Shiloh in you? I love Shiloh's character. I really did. Just from the very beginning. So did you base any of Shiloh on yourself?
I do like to put a feisty teenage girl in every series. I'm like, man, I thought for a while about making Shiloh a boy, like, as I was writing, and I was like, it just doesn't fit. Like, she's a girl. I just feel her as a girl. And yeah, I do have a little bit of that inside me. And I think that's how I would like to be if I was in that situation. Fierce and relentless and feisty and determined, and just, I love how relentless she is in her goal, that she will, a little reckless, she needs to learn and grow before, throughout the next book, but I love that determination that she has, no matter what, to try to save her brother.
Yeah, Barry said, I knew it, LOL. And speaking of other characters, Scott said, any chance you may revisit some favorite characters from earlier series?
That's the thing where, like, when the story is done, the story is done. When the characters have reached the growth point that I have for them, I think readers are like, I want more, but I don't think it would be as satisfying for them. I do think when you get that satisfying ending, like, you feel like they've completed their journeys and you can imagine them kind of like going forth into the future, but you don't really need to see that, because they've reached their growth. They've overcome what they needed to overcome. They've connected to the relationships they need to connect, if it's a romantic relationship or a friendship or whatnot. I can't say never, Scott. I'm not saying never. But right now, I feel like the stories I've written, that I like the endings where they are, and a good ending is important.
Yeah, I love that. Guys, we only have 5 more minutes left in the chat. So if you have any questions that haven't been answered yet, please pop them in. In the meantime, we did do a giveaway for those of you who RSVP'd to this chat. So I do want to announce the winners. Congratulations to David S., Susan R., and Michael C. Our team will contact you via email to get your shipping address. And congratulations, you guys won signed copies of the light we lost. So congratulations. And thank you so much, Kyla, for doing that giveaway.
Of course. Congrats, guys.
Let's see. We also had, just a second, let me go to my list. Okay. So from Ruth, she submitted this earlier. She said, I love this cast of characters, especially all of their conflicting views and motivations that you introduced right at the front. Did the inspiration for these characters come from anywhere in specific? Did you sit down and create all of them all at one time?
So I had the idea of a girl waking up next to a dead body with no idea what had happened, like no memory of what had happened. And I've had that for a while, maybe since like book 3 in my Collapse series, and that was like 4 books ago. So I knew like that's how I was going to open it. And then once I was like, okay, we're going to do a murder mystery, what characters could stem from that? What conflicts could they have? One thing I've always loved is I read Jane Harper's The Dry, which was a New York Times bestseller, like, I don't know, I want to say a few years ago, but it was probably a lot longer than that, maybe 10 years ago, which makes me feel old. But that was like a current crime and then a crime like 20 years before, right? Mm-hmm. And from like a small town and people who had known each other then and now. And like, I was really fascinated by that. It was very compelling to me as a reader. And I was like, that would be really fun to do. Mm-hmm. And especially in the Upper Peninsula, you have people who've known each other forever, small town, they went to high school together, right?
Yes.
And then if, you know, a crime from the past and how the ghosts of the past impact our present. So that kind of stuff really interests me. I was like, I want to explore that in the new series. So that's kind of just, you know, you get inspiration from different places and how can these characters come into what's the most conflict I can put them in. Mm-hmm. So if you have a cop who ends up arresting his best friend, you know, like that, to me, I was like, okay, that's some major conflict. That sounds fun. Yeah. Let's see where this can go.
And I loved how at the beginning, like an opening scene, you think, oh, there's this big bad inmate, you know, killer who's escaped. And then in the very first, you know, scene with him, you're like, wait a minute, I like this guy, like already, you know, so, yeah. You know, I bet there's more here. So I was like, wait a minute, this is the guy who's going to be released today. And I can already tell, like, there's something redeemable about him, you know, just in that opening scene. And you do a great job of writing the male point of view. Thank you. So you seem very comfortable in that. For me as a writer, it's very hard for me to write male point of views in a way that I feel is accurate and authentic. And so that you do a great job with that. Did you have to learn that as you went, like as a writer? Did you always easily write male point of views, or have you been doing it more and more as you've gotten more comfortable?
I think my male readers will probably say I've gotten better at it, but I think I've always done pretty well just trying to slip into other people's shoes, whatever the gender, and think like they think and try to feel like they feel and just step out of my own viewpoint into someone else's. I do also have male beta readers, so if I miss something, you know, they can be like, call me on it, whatever. And I think that's important. Most of the time I get it right, but not always.
Is it the same with a teenage girl? Do you sometimes have to remind yourself, like, oh, she's a teenage girl, she wouldn't be this, you know?
Oh, I don't know. I'm missing volume.
Uh-oh, can you hear us now? Testing.
Hopefully. Sorry, I can't hear you.
That's okay. We're actually
I don't know what happened.
That's okay. We're actually out of time, so we'll approach the end. Hopefully, if Kyla doesn't jump back on, we're already at 30 minutes. So thank you so much to everyone who joined us. Thank you for Kyla. I know she can't hear us, but thank you, Kyla. And and we will post the replay for you guys. So thank you so much. Thank you, Kyla. And I hope you guys join us for a future Binge Books chat. We have some amazing authors that are coming up in the upcoming months. So please check us out at bingebooks.com, and we will see you guys at the next BingeBooks Book Club chat. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, guys.